what does it take to do either? I mean, so internship is good enough to get you into the curator role, but conservation's like, that's got to be like serious science, right? Like, is that?
Yeah, and that was the issue. You have to have basically 2 years of college level chemistry. So you basically do as much chemistry as you would if you were going to be a chemistry major, except you stop at the point that you'd go on to the third or fourth year.
Mhm.
And then I think it's another 4 years specifically for conservation. And some of the best programs in the country are like NYU and Winter Tour. And then there's a program at Buffalo, but you're looking at, you know, more than $100,000 in tuition to do this. So, I mean, in some ways, it's going back to the bad old days of the only people being able to do this are people with trust funds,
Yeah.
because the salaries just don't support that level of debt on top of undergraduate.
It's one of my main complaints with guitar restoration now in the upper ends of guitar restoration, because the guitar values just aren't there to take that kind of care that some of these instruments deserve. So it's like you've got to be able to eat it financially to really be in the game. Plus, it's like it's a kind of a hippie job too. So everybody's looking to duck out of real society in that field now too. So I don't know.
But there's obviously, there's the apprenticeship route, which was kind of the route I was taking with Andrew. And also my mom is a jeweler, so I had essentially a apprenticeship training in jewelry making as I was growing up, because I would help her with various tasks, doing jewelry work. But to get the academic qualifications and the exact science behind conservation. I mean, conservation in a museum setting is different than restoration per se. I mean, you end up doing things like, running scientific tests. You end up doing pest management. So that's like having glue traps and photographing a million glue traps full of bugs and cataloging them. There's a lot of sort of strange other tasks that go along with an actual formal museum conservation position.
So when you had mentioned that you were looking for a conservationist to come to work there. So you're definitely looking for those credentials. You're not looking for somebody that knows a thing or two about a thing or two, right? You're looking for somebody that's been through a program. And
well, obviously every employer wants everything. They want both. Our previous conservator who left, he was European and he had to leave because, the distance for his family was just too much. He was trained as a guitar maker before he did a conservation program. So he did both. And ideally we get people who can do both. But since there really isn't a program in musical instrument conservation here, and because European tuition is entirely different in terms of cost, unfortunately, it ends up being much more difficult for Americans to get the kind of experience that combines both the practical and the theoretical. But the job position, the actual definition of it hasn't been written yet. I always advocate for having maximum flexibility. You don't want to exclude people before they even start. But obviously we need somebody who can handle working with instruments, who's familiar with instruments, but also understands these other roles that the conservator has in a museum setting.
one of the things that struck me, like I imagine there's one position, but you showed in the video just this wide assortment of instruments. Like, are you coming in and like, what, boy, you gotta be an expert on violins, you gotta be an expert on harps, like it seems like it's so wide. But
it is really wide, and that's where the basic conservation training comes in. I mean, they have to know the basics of issues with metal, wood, glass, plastics, but usually, I mean, no one can really be an expert in all those things. So usually someone would be an expert in one area. Like our previous conservator was a guitar maker. The one before that was a keyboard, a harpsichord maker. The one before that was a brass instrument maker. So they usually specialize in one thing. They can do the basics in other things, but if something more intensive needs to be done, then that might be outsourced to a specialist. So we've had various people do things over the years. Andrew Dipper, who I worked for. Actually, I worked on this museum's instruments before I worked here, because I worked on them when I was in Andrew's shop. We've had Derek Zelenka, formerly of Grun, work on some things, some of the brass people. So it really just depends on what the needs are.
I went to Grun's right as Derek was finishing up the that Orville lyre guitar, the Orville Gibson built lyre guitar that I think ultimately went to you guys. Is that right?
Oh, the lyre mandolin. Yeah,
was it
yeah,
a mandolin?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. We've got that. That's going to go back on exhibit. It's sort of a delightful monstrosity with those giant muscular arms